Rain fell hard over the black ocean. Lightning flashed across the sky. A single stealth ship moved silently through the storm. Inside the ship, Cale Voss stood near the metal door with his arms crossed. Water dripped from his dark combat armor. Two glowing blades rested on his back. His face showed nothing. No fear, no emotion, only silence. The old man behind him finally spoke. "After tonight, you will be free." Kyle did not turn around. He had heard those words before, many times. The old man stepped closer. His long gray coat moved softly in the cold air of the ship. "The target is simple," the master said calmly. "Kill the alien queen. Bring back the core." Kyle looked out at the storm through the small window. "And then?" he asked quietly. The master smiled slightly. "And then your debt is finished." Kyle said nothing more. For 20 years he had lived as the master's weapon. Every mission, every kill, every war, all for this moment. Freedom. The ship slowed as dark shapes appeared through the rain. A floating city. Huge alien towers rose from the ocean like broken teeth. Blue lights glowed softly beneath the rain. Bridges connected massive platforms above the water, the kingdom of Illyria, home of the last alien queen. Cale grabbed his blades. The ship doors opened. Cold rain hit his face instantly. Then, boom, an explosion shook the city. Cale narrowed his eyes. Another explosion followed. Screams echoed through the storm. The floating city was already under attack. Large creatures climbed across the bridges, tall, thin, black as shadows. Their glowing red eyes cut through the rain. Alien guards fired energy weapons. Desperately, but the monsters moved too fast. Bodies fell into the dark ocean below. Kyle watched silently. The monsters were not part of the mission. Someone else had come for the queen. Good. Chaos made things easier. Without hesitation, Cale jumped from the ship, onto the wet platform below. He landed hard and moved instantly, fast, silent, deadly. One monster rushed toward him. Cale pulled both blades free. Blue light flashed. The creature's body collapsed before it even touched him. He kept moving. Rain covered the city in silver shadows. Burning buildings reflected across the dark water. Alien civilians ran in fear. More monsters crashed through the streets. Kyle ignored all of it. His mission was ahead. Nothing else mattered. He crossed a broken bridge and entered the central tower. Inside, the halls were filled with smoke and dead guards. Some were still alive, weakly reaching for help. Kyle walked past them without slowing down. At the end of the hallway stood 6 royal guards, tall armored aliens holding glowing spears. Behind them was a massive silver door. The queen's chamber. One guard raised his weapon. "You cannot enter." Kyle slowly pulled out his blades. "I'm not asking." The guards attacked together. The hallway exploded into motion. Spears clashed against glowing steel. Kyle moved like a shadow between them. 1 strike. 2 strikes. Fast. Clean. Deadly. Within seconds, the guards collapsed onto the floor. Kyle stood breathing calmly while rainwater dripped from his armor. The silver door slowly opened. A cold blue light filled the room. Kyle stepped inside, then stopped. The throne room was silent. No soldiers. No monsters. Only one woman standing near the broken throne, the alien queen. She looked nothing like the stories. No giant monster, no terrifying creature. She was tall and pale, wearing white robes covered in blood and ash. Soft blue markings glowed across her skin. But it was her eyes that stopped him. Not angry, not hateful, afraid. Behind her, hiding against the throne, was a small alien child. The child trembled with fear. The queen protected the child with her own body despite being badly wounded. Kale slowly tightened his grip on his blades. This was the target. This was the mission. Kill the queen. Take the core. Leave. Simple. The queen looked directly into his eyes. She knew why he was here, but instead of attacking, she quietly pulled the child closer, protecting it. Kale raised one blade. The glowing edge pointed toward her throat. The child closed its eyes in fear. The queen did not move. Rain echoed softly against the broken glass ceiling above them. Kale's hand remained frozen in the air. Something felt wrong. Very wrong. For years, killing had been easy. No questions. No hesitation. But now, his body refused to move. The queen looked exhausted, broken, yet even now she cared more about the child behind her than herself. Kale stared at her silently. Why? Why protect the child instead of fighting? Why did she not hate him? A loud scream suddenly echoed outside the chamber. Then, crash! The entire wall exploded inward. A massive black creature burst into the throne room with glowing red eyes and rows of sharp teeth. The child screamed. The queen stepped back, and Kale instantly turned toward the monster with both blades ready. The mission had just changed. The throne room exploded into chaos. The giant creature smashed through the broken wall, sending stone and glass across the floor. Its black body twisted unnaturally as glowing red eyes locked onto the alien queen. The child screamed. The queen quickly pulled the child behind her. Kyle moved first. His blades flashed blue through the darkness. The creature roared and charged toward them. Kale slid under its claws and slashed across its side. Thick, black blood splashed onto the floor, but the monster barely slowed down. Too strong, too fast. It swung one massive arm toward Kale's head. He blocked it with both blades, but the impact threw him across the room. His back slammed into a pillar. Pain exploded through his ribs. The creature turned toward the queen again. The child cried louder. The queen raised one glowing hand. Blue energy burst from her palm and struck the monster directly in the chest. For a moment, the creature froze. Kale saw his chance. He rushed forward. One blade pierced deep into the creature's neck. The second blade cut across its throat. The monster collapsed with a final scream. Silence returned. Kyle stood over the body, breathing heavily. The queen stared at him in shock. He had protected her. Even he did not understand why. A loud alarm suddenly echoed across the floating city. More explosions shook the tower. The city was falling apart. Kyle looked toward the burning skyline outside. "We need to move," he said coldly. The queen hesitated for only a second before nodding. She picked up the child, and together they escaped through the lower halls of the tower. The city had become a nightmare. Bridges collapsed into the ocean. Fires spread through the rain. Alien guards fought desperately against endless waves of creatures. Kyle led them through the chaos silently. Every few minutes, another monster appeared. Every time, Kyle killed it without hesitation. The child watched him with wide, frightened eyes. The queen said nothing, but slowly, she stopped looking at him like an enemy. At the edge of the city, they found a small transport boat floating near a broken dock. Kale stepped inside first and activated the engine. The queen carefully entered while holding the child close. Behind them, the floating kingdom of Illyria burned beneath the storm. The boat disappeared into the dark ocean. For hours, nobody spoke. Rain continued falling endlessly. Kale sat near the front of the boat, watching the black water ahead. The queen stayed near the back with the child sleeping against her chest. Finally, she spoke softly. "You had many chances to kill me." Kyle did not look at her. "I know." "Why didn't you?" Kale remained silent for a long moment. Then he answered honestly, "I don't know." The queen studied him carefully, as if trying to understand what kind of man he truly was. Suddenly, The boat shook violently. Kale stood instantly. Something large moved beneath the water. Another impact hit the boat from below. The child woke up, crying. Kale grabbed his blades. The dark ocean around them began moving. Shapes circled beneath the surface. Too many. The queen's face turned pale. They followed us. A giant creature burst from the water beside the boat. Kale attacked instantly, cutting deep into its shoulder, but another monster climbed onto the back of the boat. Then another. The small transport rocked violently in the storm. Kale fought like a machine. Fast, precise, deadly. Blue blades flashed through rain and darkness. Bodies crashed into the ocean one after another, but there were too many. One creature slammed directly into Kale's chest. The impact threw him backward into the side of the boat. His blade slipped from his hand and disappeared into the sea. Another creature rushed toward the child. The queen stepped in front of it. Blue light exploded from her body. The creature screamed as the energy tore through its flesh, but the attack drained her badly. She nearly collapsed. Kale saw another monster preparing to strike her from behind. Without thinking, he jumped between them. The claws cut deep across his side. Pain burned through his body, but Kale drove his remaining blade through the creature's skull. The monster fell dead at his feet. More shadows moved beneath the ocean. Too many to fight. Kale looked ahead through the rain. An island, small, dark, covered in dense trees. "It's our only chance," he said. Using the last of its power, the damaged boat crashed onto the rocky shore. Kyle stumbled onto the wet sand. Blood poured from his side. The storm above them grew louder. The queen carried the child onto the beach before falling to her knees from exhaustion. For a moment, nobody moved. Only rain, only darkness, only the sound of waves crashing against the shore. Kyle looked around carefully. The island felt wrong, too quiet, too empty, like something was watching them from deep inside the forest. Then he noticed something strange. Far between the trees, small blue lights moved silently in the darkness. Not animals, not machines. Eyes watching them, and slowly. The lights began moving closer. The blue lights moved silently between the trees, watching, waiting. Kale slowly stood, despite the pain burning through his side. Rainwater mixed with blood across his armor. The alien queen stepped closer to the child, protectively. The island had become too quiet. Even the ocean behind them sounded distant now. Kale picked up a broken metal spear from the beach. One blade was gone forever beneath the sea, but the second still glowed faintly in his hand. The blue light stopped moving. Then, they disappeared. Kyle narrowed his eyes. "Stay behind me," he said quietly. The queen looked surprised for a moment. But she obeyed. Together they moved toward the trees. The forest was dark and cold. Massive roots twisted across the ground like giant bones. Thick fog covered everything between the ancient black trunks. The child held tightly onto the queen's hand. Every few seconds, Kale caught movement in the shadows. Something was following them. Something patient. Suddenly, a loud scream echoed deep in the forest. The child jumped in fear. Then silence returned again. Kale hated silence. Silence usually meant death was waiting. After several minutes, they found the ruins of an old stone structure hidden beneath giant vines. Half the roof had collapsed long ago, but it was dry. Safe enough for one night. Kale entered first and searched the area carefully. No movement. No traps. He lowered his weapon slightly. "We stay here." The queen gently sat the child near the wall. The little alien looked exhausted and terrified. Kale stared at the child quietly. Small, weak, completely innocent. He had seen children die before during wars. He never cared, not until now. The thought annoyed him. Kale turned away and walked back outside into the rain. A few minutes later, he returned carrying broken branches for firewood. The Queen looked at him silently. "You keep surprising me," she said softly. Kale ignored the comment. Soon a small fire crackled inside the ruins. Warm orange light pushed back the darkness. For the first time since entering the floating city, things felt calm. But Kale's mind refused to rest. He sat near the entrance watching the rain. The Queen finally spoke again. "You are not what I expected." Kyle gave a cold smile. "You don't know what I am." The Queen studied him carefully. "I know pain when I see it." Kale's expression hardened instantly. Pain. That word meant weakness. The Master taught him that as a child. Pain was weakness, emotion was weakness, mercy was weakness. Kale closed his eyes briefly. Suddenly memories returned. A younger version of himself standing in blood. Bodies everywhere, the Master watching calmly. "Again," the old man had ordered. Kyle remembered killing his first target at 10 years old. He remembered feeling sick afterward. The Master beat that feeling out of him. Years. Later, nothing remained inside him, or at least, that was what he believed. A soft sound pulled him back to reality. The child had fallen asleep beside the fire. The Queen carefully covered the child with part of her robe. Kale watched quietly. "Why protect the child so much?" he finally asked. The Queen looked down at the sleeping child. "Because she is all that remains of my family." Something about her voice felt heavy, broken. Kale understood that feeling more than he wanted to admit. Outside, thunder shook the island again. Then came another sound. Footsteps. Kyle stood instantly. The Queen's eyes widened. The footsteps circled the ruins slowly, not human, too heavy, too many. Kyle moved toward the broken doorway. Red eyes appeared between the trees. At least 15 pairs. The same creatures from the floating city. The monsters had followed them onto the island. The child woke up crying softly. The creatures stepped closer. Kale tightened his grip on his blade. The Queen raised her glowing hands weakly, but Kyle noticed something strange. The monsters were not looking at the Queen. They were staring directly at him, almost nervously, as if they feared him. One creature slowly stepped forward, growling. Kyle walked out into the rain alone. The monster attacked. Instantly, Kale moved faster. One clean strike cut through its neck. The creature collapsed into the mud. The others froze. Kale lifted his glowing blade toward them. Rain poured down his face as he stared into the darkness. "Come closer," he said coldly. For several long seconds, nobody moved. Then, suddenly, the creatures backed away, slowly, carefully, like wild animals avoiding a larger predator. A moment later, they vanished into the forest. The Queen stared at Kale in disbelief. "They fear you." Kale looked down at the dead creature. Then he noticed something disturbing. A strange blue mark glowed faintly beneath the monster's skin. The same glow as the core, the same glow as the Queen's powers. His chest suddenly burned painfully. Kale grabbed his armor tightly. Something beneath his skin pulsed once. Blue light flashed briefly across his veins. The Queen's face turned pale instantly. "No," she whispered. Kale looked at her sharply. "What is it?" The Queen stepped backward. Slowly, fear filled her eyes for the first time since meeting him. "The core," she whispered softly. "It's beginning to choose you." The fire inside the ruins suddenly flickered blue. Kyle's chest burned harder. He dropped to one knee, breathing heavily as strange energy moved beneath his skin like living lightning. The Queen stepped toward him carefully. Fear filled her face now. Not fear of the monsters, fear of him. The child hid behind her silently. Kyle pressed one hand against the ground as pain spread through his entire body. What is happening to me? He growled. The queen hesitated, then finally answered. The core is alive. Kale slowly looked up at her. That thing inside you? She nodded once. It is not a weapon. It chooses who can carry its power. Kale laughed bitterly through the pain. Well, it made a bad choice. Blue veins continued glowing across his neck and arms. For a moment, Kyle heard strange whispers inside his head, soft voices, thousands of them, ancient, sad, lonely, then suddenly, silence again. The pain disappeared. Kyle stood slowly. The queen stared at him carefully. No human has ever survived contact with the core before. Kale picked up his blade calmly. There's a first time for everything. Outside, rain finally stopped, but the island still felt wrong. Heavy, like the forest itself was waiting for something. The child slowly stepped closer to Kale. She looked at the faint blue glow beneath his skin, then quietly placed a small hand against his arm. The burning stopped completely. Kale looked surprised. The child smiled weakly. It was the first time Kale had seen her smile. Something unfamiliar moved inside his chest, not pain. Something warmer. The queen noticed it too. You are changing, she said softly. Kale turned away immediately. I'm still the same man. But deep inside, he knew that was no longer true. Later that night, Kale sat alone near the ruins while sharpening his blade. The island was silent again, too silent. Then he heard footsteps behind him, light, calm. The queen sat beside him near the fire. For several minutes, neither spoke. Finally, she broke the silence. What were you before this mission? Kale kept sharpening the blade. A weapon? No, she said quietly. Before they turned you into one. Kale stopped moving. Nobody had ever asked him that before. Not once. He stared into the fire silently. I don't remember, he admitted, and it was true. His childhood existed only in broken pieces. Cold training rooms, blood on metal floors, the master's voice. Pain. That was all. The queen watched him carefully. That is sad. Kyle almost laughed. Sad. Such a simple word for such an empty life. Suddenly the child ran toward them from deeper inside the ruins. She looked frightened. The lights? The queen translated softly. Kale stood immediately. Blue light now glowed between the trees again. But this time, there were hundreds. The lights floated silently through the forest like ghosts. Kale grabbed his blade. The queen slowly shook her head. Wait! The lights moved closer. Shapes slowly appeared beneath them. Transparent figures, tall alien forms made entirely from soft blue energy. Kale narrowed his eyes. Spirits? The queen stepped forward slowly. My people. The glowing figures surrounded the ruins silently. Not threatening, not violent, watching, waiting. The child walked toward them, fearlessly. One spirit gently touched her forehead before fading away. Kale felt the core inside his chest pulse again. The spirits suddenly turned toward him together. Every glowing face stared directly at him. Kale tightened his grip on the blade. The air grew colder. One spirit slowly floated closer. Unlike the others, this figure looked older, stronger. Its glowing eyes locked onto Kale. Then a voice echoed inside his mind. The destroyer becomes the protector. Kale stepped backward instantly. The spirit raised one glowing hand toward his chest. The core reacted violently. Blue energy exploded outward from Kale's body. The ruins shook. The fire went out instantly. The child screamed. Kale collapsed onto the ground as visions flooded his mind. He saw ancient alien cities burning, human warships attacking from the sky. Dead. Children, falling stars, and standing above all of it, the master, watching everything, smiling. Kyle's eyes opened wide. It was humans, he whispered. The Queen looked at him sadly. Yes, Kyle's breathing grew heavier. The war. Humanity started it, she finished quietly. Kale stared at the ground in silence. Everything he believed suddenly felt rotten. False. The monsters, the war, the mission, all lies. The Master never wanted peace. He wanted the core, and Kale had helped him destroy entire worlds to find it. The spirits slowly began fading back into the forest. But before disappearing completely, the old spirit looked at Kale one final time. They are coming. The lights vanished. Silence returned. Then, far above the island, a bright red light appeared in the clouds. Kale looked up instantly. A ship. Human. The Queen's face turned pale. More lights appeared behind it. Then more. Warships, an entire fleet. Kale's expression darkened immediately. The Master had found them. And this time, he wasn't coming alone. The sky above the island turned red. Massive human warships slowly descended through the dark clouds like metal giants. Their engines shook the ocean beneath them. Kale stood motionless near the cliff. Rain began falling again. Of course it did. The alien Queen held the child close as the ships surrounded the island from every direction. Blue lights flashed across. The clouds. Weapons charging. Soldiers preparing. The Master had come to finish the mission himself. Kale tightened his grip on his blade. No more running, he said quietly. The Queen looked at him carefully. You may die. Kale gave a small, cold smile. I was supposed to die a long time ago. For a moment, neither spoke. Then the child stepped toward Kyle and wrapped her small arms around him. Kyle froze. He had fought monsters, killed armies, survived impossible missions. But this simple act almost broke him completely. Slowly, awkwardly, he placed one hand on the child's head. The Queen watched silently. For the first time since they met, she saw peace in his eyes. Suddenly, boom. The first explosion hit the far side of the island. Trees burst into flames. Human dropships descended rapidly through the rain. Dozens of armored soldiers poured onto the beaches below. Kyle stepped forward immediately. Stay behind me. The Queen grabbed his arm before he could leave. You cannot fight all of them alone. Kyle looked toward the burning forest. No, he admitted. Not alone. The core inside his chest suddenly pulsed brighter. Blue energy spread beneath his skin again. But this time, it did not hurt. The glowing spirits slowly appeared between the trees once more, hundreds of them. Watching silently, the soldiers moving through the forest stopped nervously. Even they could feel something was wrong. Kyle slowly walked forward into the rain. The spirits followed behind him like a silent army. On the beach below, human soldiers raised their weapons instantly. Then the Master stepped out from the center dropship, calm, cold, unmoving, exactly as Kyle remembered. The old man looked at him for a long moment. Then his eyes shifted toward the Queen. You failed the mission, the Master said softly. Kyle stood between him and the Queen. No. The Master raised one eyebrow. Kyle's glowing blade slowly lifted. I finally understood it. Rain poured heavily around them. The soldiers waited nervously. Nobody moved. The Master sighed quietly. I trained you since childhood. You trained a weapon, Kale answered, and now the weapon is pointed at you. For the first time, the Master smiled, not angry, not surprised, almost proud. Good, he whispered. Then suddenly he attacked. The old man moved faster than human eyes could follow. Twin black blades crashed against Kyle's glowing weapon. The impact shook the ground beneath them. The battle exploded across the beach. Kyle fought harder than ever before. Rain sprayed around every strike, blue and black. Light clashed violently in the storm. The master still moved perfectly, every attack precise, every movement deadly. "You hesitate now," the master growled while blocking Kale's blade. "That weakness will kill you." Kale pushed him backward. "No," he answered coldly. "It's what finally made me human." The master attacked again instantly. Their blades collided again and again across the burning shoreline. Nearby, human soldiers opened fire toward the spirits and alien survivors emerging from the forest. Chaos consumed the island. The queen used her glowing powers to shield the child and wounded survivors. But Kale only focused on one thing: ending this. The master suddenly stabbed forward. Kale dodged too slowly. The blade pierced deep into his side. Pain exploded through him. The master leaned closer. "You were mine," he whispered. Kale looked directly into his eyes. "Not anymore." The core inside Kale's chest erupted with blinding blue light. Energy exploded outward across the battlefield. The ocean itself seemed to shake. Every soldier froze. The spirits glowed brighter than ever before. The master stepped backward in shock. For the first time in his life, fear appeared on his face. Kyle slowly pulled the blade from his body. Blue light surrounded him completely now. The rain stopped in midair around him. The entire island fell silent. Then Kale attacked one final time. One clean strike. Fast. Perfect. The master's blades shattered instantly. A second strike followed. The old man froze, then slowly collapsed onto the wet sand. Silence. The war was over. But suddenly the core inside Kale became unstable. Blue energy cracked across the ground beneath him. The sky darkened violently. The queen's eyes widened in horror. "The core is breaking!" Kale looked at the glowing storm above them. The island began collapsing. The ocean rose violently around the shores. If the core exploded, everything would die. Kale looked back at the queen and the child, then quietly smiled. A real smile this time. "Take them and go." The queen shook her head immediately. "No, this is the only way." She stepped toward him through the storm. "You are no longer alone." Kyle stared at her silently. For his entire life, nobody had ever stayed. Nobody had ever chosen him. But she did. The queen gently placed her glowing hands against his chest. The child joined her. The spirits surrounded them all. Then together, their lights became one. A massive wave of blue energy rose into the sky. The storm disappeared instantly. The ocean became calm, and for the first time in many years, sunlight touched the island. Green life slowly spread across the dead land. Trees, bloomed flowers opened. The island breathed again. Kale slowly opened his eyes. The child smiled at him. The queen stood beside him beneath the warm sunlight. No more rain, no more missions, no more killing, only peace. And as Kale looked toward the rising sun, he finally understood something simple. The alien queen had not saved his life. She had saved what remained of his soul.